All right, next is the Ramses Group 1. Go for it.
Hello, everyone. So we are Group 1, and we will be talking about Ramses code. So it's basically a code that usually applies, well, it's basically a code that typically simulates shocks and instabilities. So in the following 10 minutes, we'll be showering you guys with a lot of movies and simulations. So just grab your water bottle, popcorn, and enjoy. So the next would be, okay.
Okay, so Ramses is an MHD code. So how does it work exactly? So you translate your problem into a mesh, and then you look at neighboring cells like here, and translate your MHD equations into an initial value problem. Then you can calculate the fluxes between cell interfaces, which gives you two fluxes, which you can then interpolate to get a value across the cell. And for big simulations, this can be very high in computational cost. So it uses so-called adaptive mesh refinement, where in regions with higher densities, the mesh automatically spits. And on top of this, there's also a gravity solver and galaxy formation modules. And here on the right, you can see a galaxy that has been simulated.
So I'm going to share with you what we learned to do with Ramses during this week. So we started solving the version equation in one dimension. So this is the video that I made. So this is the density versus position and how it evolves over the time. So then we learn how to do 3D simulations with Ramses. So this is the set of explosion. And I use a package named YT. And YT is very useful to analyze and visualize astrophysical simulations. Then I added the magnetic field in all directions. So with YT, I visualize the magnetic field lines. And finally, we finish with the set of the Helmholtz instability. These are two fluids with different densities. And then with solenoidal functions, we perturbate in G and X plane. And I added a command in YT to do a zoom in the center of the simulation, so we can see the instability better. This is a zoom factor of 2.
All right, so that was a really great sort of an overview of what you can do with Ramses. So you see we have instabilities, you can simulate shock waves and stuff like that. So I do want to mention that all of these movies that you'll be watching before and after this slide is it's all made by us during the hands-on sessions, and let's mention. And so each of us take very different approach of the project, and we all work on different simulations. So what I was looking on is a 1D implementation of the set of Taylor blast wave. So it's basically what happens. I'm interested in seeing what happens to the density profile when you have a huge injection of energy, sort of like a nuclear blast wave. So what I'm going to show you now, I have two pictures. You will distinguish which of one is blast wave and which one is not. So it's not difficult. Anyway, so the purpose of this picture, well, the left picture is basically showing what happens. This is the Trinity test. And this is the picture that was taken 25 milliseconds after the explosion. And so the reason why I'm showing the jello here is because this simulation is a self-similarity solution, which means that you can scale it to different length scale. And so what I'm about to show you is and that's why we see the plots after this, they all have no units because it's basically scalable. And so this is a 1D density profile of blast wave. So you could just follow any of these peaks and you see how they evolve around. There's not really much to talk about it, but just look at them, I guess. So, yes. All right, so move on to the next one.
Okay, so passing from 1 or 2D from 3D in this setup blast wave test, we can kind of emulate supernova explosion. And here we can see how this explosion can interact with different sets of initial conditions for the magnetic field. So for example, in the left, you can see that for a weak and unidimensional magnetic field, the shock of this explosion grows pretty symmetrically. While in a presence of more stronger magnetic field and pushing the explosion in all directions, that magnetic field had strong enough to change the final shape of the explosion, giving this more elongated shape. Also with YT, we can plot this instead of making slices along the x-axis. We can plot, do a 3D plot, and we can see that in a presence of uniform magnetic field, the explosion grows pretty evenly. It's pretty symmetric. So that's it.
So yeah, I looked at the different injection parameters we can choose. So we had like 2 options. First was the density and the pressure with the injection. And in my setup, I used different positions. I think the pointer, yes. So we have like 4 supernova positions. Supernova, not similar. State of blast wave injections. I wanted to see how the shock fronts interact with one. So you can see it here and how it interacts at the edge of the medium. So we have like a high density and lower density. And then if we increase the density in which we inject the pressure, so it's shown on the right, we see a much bigger impact. So much more mass is swept up and momentum is much larger and expands quicker. And if we increase the pressure like by an order of magnitude, it accelerates even more. So one have to watch out. So the times are not the same at the end because it took quite a lot of computation time. And yes, so that's it on my side.
Okay, so yeah, it's super cool what kind of different physics we can do with this. So yeah, here you see a dense cloud embedded into a on-streaming wind. And there are, okay, and there's a supernova explosion in the center that just adds mechanical energy. And then there are 2 other setups where we add self-gravity on top, and here also horizontal magnetic fields. And we see those 3 different points in time, and we can see lots of cool different stuff. So, okay, so here's a shock around the supernova. There's a shock. We see this magnetic draping layer, and if we go here to the right, we see how the gas is compressed by run pressure stripping. Here even more because also the gravity attracts something, and here it's completely diluted because of the horizontal magnetic fields. So that's cool.
All right, so before we end, let's do a little bit of a comparison with other codes, more specifically a repo. And for this, we use Kevin Helmholtz instabilities. Thank you. So what I did, I simply included the same velocity perturbations in Sprinkle 2010. I implemented it in Ramses and then compare it with a repo. And as we can see, they are very similar, a little bit different because of different boundary conditions and not exactly the same resolution, but overall, I think we can conclude that both codes work very well for Kevin Helmholtz. And yes, thank you.
Questions for the Ramses group? Yeah, Melanie.
I have a question related to the effect of the magnetic field. So can you maybe, I guess you tested only one magnetic field, but do you know whether like if there is like a threshold, a critical magnetic field where you see the effect that you are seeing rather than without magnetic?
Okay, yeah. So I actually had to play around a bit so it was a combination of setting the densities in the right way and also setting the velocity of the on-streaming wind in the right way and the magnetic field that you can have some cool effects. So basically I just plugged in some numbers.
Other questions?
So with this blast wave, like, are there certain limitations to the simulation as to how high you can make the pressure or something, or is it just something that you can scale as you wish?
So when I was doing the blast wave, the one you saw earlier was a pressure difference of about 5 orders of magnitude. You can play with a lot of parameters. There's like, you can play with the box length, you can play with if you want the region to be moving, if there's density in the region. But I've not played around that much, so to say, so I don't know where is the limit exactly. But there were a few crashing reasons. For example, if you were not to use the proper Riemann solver, right? There's like different solver, and there's also like the Courant factor, which I will not get too much detail into it, but I hope that answers your question.
All right, can we get group 2 coming down
I have a last question about
while we get the last question?
about the signification of the acronym of Ramses that was on slide 2. Is it a real one, the true one?
Yes, it is the real one. Yeah. So it means AMR without superhuman effort.
All right, let's thank group 1 again.